Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Goddess Garden Book Chat, where we dive into books across all genres in our ever growing library. Don't forget to subscribe and share. And if you're enjoying the content, come back. We'd love to see you again. Now, the term ever growing library is not a stretch. I cannot, for the life of me, stop getting books. If it's not from the library, trust me, I'm combing for good reads. I love doing these reviews, so I want to talk about this particular book I got from the library. I don't own this book. I'm considering it, but when things are available at the library, I tend to jump on it. Now, today we're taking a thought-provoking journey into Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America by Heather Cox Richardson. She's been appearing lately on several news outlets just based on the current times that we live in. And this book unpacks the historical threads that have shaped America's political landscape and offers crucial insights into the challenges facing democracy today. It's an essential read for anyone who wants to understand how history informs our present and future. I'll be breaking down what each chapter brings to the discussion, and you know me, I do it as a deep dive. I take my notes, I run it through my filters, and that's what my chat squad is here for. They'll be highlighting Richardson's key arguments and expanding on modern challenges that shape the current state of U.S. democracy. Plus, hello, I'm not done. I have a special what-if scenario to consider that could dramatically alter the course of history, at least in the way that we think about it. So definitely stay tuned. From my personal perspective at the end, I have some thoughts you won't want to miss. Let's get started.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're going deep today.
Deep.
Yeah, into the state of American democracy.
I think that's on everyone's mind these days.
For sure. A lot to unpack. And we're using Heather Cox Richardson's book, Democracy Awakening.
Great book.
It is. And this really thought-provoking review from Goddess Garden Book Chat to kind of guide our exploration today.
Okay.
I do want to say right at the top, though, this is a safe space for all of our listeners.
I agree.
We want to have these conversations, right? Explore different perspectives and really critically think about these really important issues facing the U.S.
Absolutely.
And it's important to note this isn't a directive from 11 Goddess or anything. It's just us, wanting to facilitate open discussions.
Yeah, just a starting point for conversations people can have.
Exactly. So with that said, let's dive in. I think one of the most striking things that Richardson does in her book is she talks about this idea of a fragile foundation for American democracy.
Yeah, I think that's a really crucial point. She really digs into the historical context, right? And that can be really illuminating.
Absolutely. And she goes all the way back to the Founding Fathers, right? I mean, she talks about how they had this vision for democracy.
They did.
But also built in all these tensions.
Right.
Between federal and state power.
Absolutely.
That we are still grappling with today. It's amazing to think about.
It is.
How these debates from that era, like how representation, economic policy, are kind of mirroring some of the partisan divides that we see now.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's so fascinating is that these early compromises that were made, they were meant to kind of unify.
Right, of course. A very diverse nation at the time.
Exactly. But they almost, I think in some ways also became potential points of fracture later on.
Oh, interesting.
So you think about the whole issue of states' rights versus federal authority. I mean, that tension, you can trace that through, American history.
Wow.
Then how it's influenced everything from slavery to the Civil War.
It's fascinating.
To even debates we have today about healthcare and environmental regulations.
Right, like these early fault lines are still rumbling beneath the surface.
They are.
Which brings us to populism.
Yeah.
Because it seems like populist movements have often kind of exploited those fault lines.
Right.
And both the book and the review really touch on this, don't they?
They do, yeah. Richardson really, she goes through this whole history of populist movements in America. And it's interesting, they tend to emerge during these periods of rapid social and economic change.
Makes sense.
If you think back to the late 19th century,
okay,
that was a time of huge upheaval, right? You had industrialization, you had mass immigration transforming the country. And that's when the Populist Party came to prominence.
Right.
And their whole thing was they were channeling these anxieties, these fears of farmers and workers who felt left behind.
It's interesting how history seems to be rhyming, right? Because the review draws a very clear line from those historical examples to the present day.
Yeah.
It's like they're pointing out how certain politicians today are using that same type of rhetoric, right?
Oh, yeah.
About the elite versus the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
To tap into those feelings of resentment and fear.
It's a very, very effective strategy.
Throughout history. Yeah, it's almost like a playbook.
It is, yeah. It's a try and true.
Right. And the media plays such a crucial role in all of this, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, Richardson argues that the media landscape has always shaped how we as Americans understand democracy.
I would agree with that.
But it's even more.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, right, with the internet and social media,
yeah.
It's so much more fragmented, and there's just so much misinformation out there.
Yeah, and so much harder to figure out what's real and what's not.
The review brought up deepfakes.
Yeah.
Which are those, digitally manipulated videos that make it look like someone is saying or doing something that they never actually said or did.
Right.
It's really terrifying.
It is.
To think how easily people could be misled.
Yeah.
Especially during something like an election.
Absolutely. That's why I think media literacy, right?
Oh, for sure.
Is so crucial now.
More than ever, yeah.
More than ever. We have to be really critical consumers of information and just look carefully at sources and really evaluate, look for evidence.
Right, because it's not just about the information itself.
Right.
It's also about who has the power to spread it.
Exactly.
And that brings us to money in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Which Richardson does not shy away from.
No.
And the review also really underscores this point.
They do. It's a big one, yeah.
Yeah. They both kind of highlight how this increasing influence of wealth in politics just distorts democratic processes.
It does. I mean, you think about lobbying, right?
Right.
By powerful special interests.
Exactly.
And just the flood of campaign donations.
It makes you wonder,
It does.
who are the politicians really accountable to?
Right. Their donors or their constituents.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is all happening, of course, against a backdrop of, widening economic inequality.
Right.
So it's almost like this situation where the wealthiest individuals and corporations have this outsized influence.
Yeah.
On policies that affect everyone.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder if the system is really designed to represent the interests of all citizens equally.
And that's really the question that Richardson wrestles with throughout the book, And she looks at the Supreme Court and its role, right, in shaping American democracy and how certain decisions that have been made have really expanded the influence of money in politics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which then impacts things like voting rights and gerrymandering.
And speaking of the courts, she also really digs into how the judiciary itself
absolutely.
has become so politicized, especially the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And she argues that this trend further undermines public trust in democratic institutions.
Oh, for sure. And the review really echoes that concern. I mean, they both really hit on how critical it is to have a fair and impartial judiciary.
Absolutely.
And safeguard those democratic principles and protect everybody's rights.
It is. It's like the bedrock, right?
It is.
Of a functioning democracy.
Yeah.
And this leads us to civil rights.
Absolutely.
Which is something that both Richardson and the reviewer acknowledge as, a cornerstone of American democracy.
Yeah.
They both talk about the progress that has been made, but also recognize that the struggle for equality continues.
It does.
On many fronts, right?
Yes.
Voting rights, LGBTQ plus rights, economic justice, the list goes on and on.
And I think it's really important to remember that pursuit of civil rights, it's an ongoing process.
It is.
It takes constant vigilance and action from all of us.
Absolutely.
To hold our leaders accountable.
Yeah.
And keep pushing for a more just and equitable society for everyone.
And all of these issues are so intertwined, right?
They are.
This fragility of our foundation, the influence of money, the role of the media, fighting for civil rights, it all leads back to this question of whether American democracy is really at risk.
It's a huge question.
It is.
And it's one that both Richardson and the reviewer express a lot of concern about.
They do.
About the erosion of democratic norms, the rise of authoritarianism, and not just in the U.S., but globally.
Right.
They point to things like voter suppression efforts, attacks on the free press, attempts to undermine the legitimacy of elections.
That's a lot. And the review even poses this really thought-provoking what-if question.
Oh, yeah.
What if the Equal Rights Amendment had passed back in the 1970s? Makes you think, right?
It does, yeah.
About how different things might look if women had had full legal equality decades ago.
Yeah, it's a fascinating hypothetical.
It is.
It really makes you think about the consequences, right?
Yeah.
Of choices that were made in the past. and how they shape where we are today.
So where does that leave us? It feels like American democracy is facing some really, really serious challenges.
It is.
And I think it's more important than ever to understand the historical context so that we can navigate the present.
Right. And as citizens, we have this responsibility to be informed and engaged and to actively participate, in shaping the future
of our democracy. I love that. That is such a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us today for this deep dive into the state of American democracy. We hope this sparks conversation, and we encourage you to keep exploring these issues. It's really important to think critically about what it means to be a citizen in today's world.
Couldn't agree more.
This particular selection was a very interesting read. Like so many books about democracy, I realize as I continue to absorb the written word in all genres, how much I'm learning versus how many things that are factual that I should have learned a long time ago. And when you ask yourself, why does democracy awakening matter today? It's because democracy isn't a static system. And somewhere along the way, I think for me personally, I forgot that. I forgot that it's a living, breathing structure that requires our participation, or it will disseminate right before your eyes. As we face increasing threats from misinformation, political polarization, and economic disparity, please excuse me, Richardson's book reminds us that history holds the keys to understanding and protecting our democratic institutions. And I no longer fault the education system by which I came up as keeping information from me, because I've had the fortune of being able to learn as much as I want about whatever subject I want. I don't know if that will always be the case, but currently the books that are out there literally remove all barriers to information. And that doesn't just include the history lesson. It includes what action looks like in the past and what action can look like in the future. Every decision that is made by a voter, that's made by citizens, and made by a community shapes the direction of that democracy. So it doesn't matter where you live, it really does matter that you understand that your community and your participation in it as a citizen is shaping what's happening around you. What happens next is in our hands, is ultimately something that I think I got from this book. So I want to hear from you. What resonated with you most in this book? Did you see echoes of the past in today's political climate? That's a good question. Because if you are a reader like I am, or if you're a historian, what you've seen happen in the past versus the climate of politics that we currently face globally, I don't think a lot of what these things going on are in comparison anymore. I think we've moved past being able to compare the whole of history to the effects of decisions being made currently. So let's keep this discussion going. I really would love to hear your comments. Please remember, this is a safe space. And just as this book really does offer us information, it offers us education. And so hopefully we can enjoy this as a happy read, as an informative read, and a way for us to say that I see a perspective here measured against all the other perspectives that I absorb, and I get where this is coming from. So until next time, readers, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're a part of the conversation. Subscribe, share, stay connected to God is Garden Book Chat. I love that you're here, and I want to see you back. Till next time, friends.